You're here in Washington, D.C. Let's start before we get into the supply chain chaos that's starting to unwind. You're here for more money. What are you asking the administration for?
That's right. How we sharpen our approach on the infrastructure money, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act that's geared towards cleaner equipment and cleaner energy, or the IIJA, the law that was put into place. $17 billion are designated for ports and waterways here in the United States. I want to make sure that we're a good applicant, that we're a port of choice for the advisors.
This is really interesting because people hear, well, the infrastructure bill passed. That's a lot of money. They sent it all out there, and Mitch Landrieu's crossing the country, taking a victory lap. But it's actually being allocated now, and it sounds like a very complicated process. How do you go through the stages here, and what's left for you in your request?
Oh, there's still a lot left, and that's why I'm here. It's still early days in the cycle of the infrastructure law. I just came from Mayor Landrieu's office where he offered some advice on how we need to be working with the Department of Transportation. I'll be seeing others there this week as well, and making sure that we're approaching this from an applicant standpoint where we're hitting all the marks and becoming, again, in the eyes of those evaluators, the port where this investment needs to go.
What are you doing with the money? Is that the point? You have to get specific on actual projects now?
That's right. And we've got three big segments, Joe, that we look at. The traditional bricks and mortar infrastructure at the port, and now digitalization, right? That to make that cargo flow smoother. Second is that cleaner equipment and energy, because we want to get to zero emission by the year 2030 on our port complex, 2035 with heavy duty trucks. And the third piece is for our workforce. We just announced on Friday in Los Angeles the new workforce training campus, which is the first in the nation for goods movement. Now we need to get equipment in there so our workforce of the future knows how to keep that up, as well as get the next generation of worker on board at the port.
Container volumes, though, plunged in February, 43%. The only other lower time than that was when the economy stopped because of COVID-19. Do you think that is why the administration is holding back some of these funds?
I don't think so, but it is a cyclical downturn that we did predict. You've got really high retail inventory still throughout the country. The retailers tell me directly they're trying to work down that inventory before the new products come in. But after the
everyone was hoarding.
Everyone was doing a lot of that, and we just kept buying. But it was a mismatch of goods that were in place seasonally versus what we were buying. So we'll get on a more normal cadence of imports and distribution after the 4th of July. We've got to work that inventory down. 1.37 was the latest inventory sales ratio from the St. Louis Fed. That's still pretty high. We'll see about a 20% uptick in the month of March compared to February. So coming off a long Lunar New Year break in Asia, we're starting to see production pick up a little bit.
You said earlier today on Bloomberg Radio that long line of ships that we had been counting coming out of the supply chain crisis has now fallen to zero. What does that mean for the labor shortage that you are also dealing with? Getting actual young people to become truck drivers to bring goods to the last mile.
Right. We had 109 ships backed up about a year ago outside the ports of L.A. and Long Beach. During the first 8 months of the year, we broke records in 5 of those months and worked those ships down to single digits. So effectively, that backlog was gone in August of last year. And then we started to see cargo move to the East and Gulf Coast because folks were worried about our dock workers' labor negotiations with the Employers Association. So you had a combination of two things happening right there. With the cargo flow now, and it will come back, now's the time to make these investments and do the work on the construction jobs, on building the infrastructure, while you've got a little more room to play with on the ground. For the workforce, we've got to attract, recruit, and retain folks in these segments. We're not immune compared to anybody else in America today with looking to fill jobs, but we've got warehouse workers, truck drivers, and administrators like me that we really need to bring into this industry.
You said many cargo owners, though, will not have these contracts with the port until there's a labor deal. So where are you right now negotiating with the unions?
Between the Employers Association, the Pacific Maritime, and the ILW, the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, they're at the outer edge of what traditionally has been the longest it takes to negotiate one of these contracts. They're still at the table talking on a regular basis, and more importantly, the rank and file are out on the docks working every day, so there's no disruption to operations.
But, and I just want to bring this up to you, the Pacific Maritime Association said that dock workers are failing to stagger lunch breaks, causing delays. Is that part of some of these grievances to striking a deal?
It's a very minor issue, but that's the view of the PMA, and I respect that. But it has not impacted operations. What we also see as well is that not only is this a coastal framework for the 29 ports, but each one of these individual ports has their own agreement too. This is hard work, collective bargaining, and especially when the two sides have not met formally in 8 years due to extensions that have taken place leading up till now.
How big of a loss is Marty Walsh going away? You lost an important mediator there in the middle of this process.
Marty Walsh hit the ground running as soon as he took the oath of office as Labor Secretary. We're going to miss him dearly. But his Deputy Secretary, Julie Su, who has been nominated by the President for the permanent job, was the California Labor Secretary.
So that brings continuity.
She knows both sides very well, knows us, and it brings continuity to the office.
These industry groups wrote openly to President Biden. We saw him get involved in the railroad negotiations. Do you think he would personally get involved in these negotiations?
To my knowledge, the president was the first sitting president to meet with both sides during the active negotiation back on June 10th last year at the Port of Los Angeles. His cabinet members have maintained great business relationships with both sides. This administration has been involved since day one with the supply chain, as you know, as well as these quiet discussions on negotiations. And they're at the ready at any time. But what I can tell you is that, realistically speaking, with the Labor Secretary, the knowledge that they have there, the difference being there's no hard deadline on this contract compared to what we saw with the railroad industries. So we need to let the collective bargaining process keep working, yet that watchful eye here in Washington is omnipresent.
I want to bring you back for a more top-level view to this infrastructure conversation, to the State of the Union. Listen to Joe Biden just a few months ago.
Already we've funded over 20,000 projects, including major airports from Boston to Atlanta to Portland. Projects that are going to put thousands of people to work rebuilding our highways, our bridges, our railroads, our tunnels, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet, all across America. Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
We're just getting started here, Gene. When are you going to get an answer on that extra money from the administration?
Well, he's exactly right. And speaking with Mayor Landrieu earlier, they have projects going now in 4,000 counties across the country. I just want to make sure, as a representative of the nation's largest port, that we get enough to keep building up what we want. And what I've asked the administration is, please, let's not forget what we felt like when those 109 ships were backed up and folks were worried about canceling holidays. We came through on the operational side. Now we've got to come through on the investment, build, develop, and deliver sides.
The West Coast ports are critical. In terms of U.S. GDP, it's some 9%. How much percentage what is the percentage you're asking for this money from that?
Just like the president said, so far it's early days. The West Coast ports have gotten about 15% of the available money. And I'm just trying to make sure we keep swinging for the fences. We move 40% of the cargo. I'd love to see 40% of the money designated for ports, which was $17 billion in the law.